What's up, gang? Welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now, listen, the Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, moi, as I say, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So, come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me. Guys, welcome to today's episode of The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh, and boy, do we have a special guest. Robert Edward Grant is in the house. What's up, Robert?
Hey, Darius, how are you?
Oh, man, I am so freaking pumped to have you here today, my friend. Thank you for coming on.
Happy to be here with you. Happy to be here.
Oh, man. So, audience, first of all, I messed up. It is Sir Robert Edward Grant, because our main man here has been knighted not once, but twice. So we're going to start off with the Sir Robert Edward Grant.
Thank you.
I mean, I can't wait to hear the story about you getting knighted, because I have a good friend that's was knighted in Spain, and Sergio Fernandez de Cordova is his name. And when he got knighted, I was like, oh, man, I'm Persian. I don't know how to get knighted. I got to figure this out. But I'm half Italian, so I think there might be a chance.
Okay, there you go.
But guys, so one of my good friends, John Broman's wife, Tatiana, went to an event that Robert was a speaker at, and I saw some clips from the event, and I'm like, man, who's this guy? He's doing some really interesting work around consciousness, and just like, I was like, as you guys know, I talk about sacred geometry. I'm a fan of like what's happening inside this world and maybe outside this world. And when I stumbled upon Robert's stuff, and I was like, dude, I can't believe how have I not been a fan all along? This guy's doing some amazing work. So I quickly latched onto his social profiles and started following him. And as the audience knows, whenever I like something, I instantly like had the team go and start trying to get folks on the show, because I want to have a conversation, man. And you are so gracious to give us some of your time. So grateful to have you here today, my friend.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be here with you, and excited for our conversation. I know you're big into consciousness, and that's one of the areas that I spend quite a lot of my time in, and my research efforts. So I'm excited for this conversation.
Oh, thank you. So for those of you guys that are less familiar with Robert's work, as I mentioned earlier, he was knighted twice in Montenegro in 2023 and Portugal 2024, founder and leader of numerous successful companies. And I saw some of your background in the 3D world. You've had some really big jobs. And now you're doing a lot of work in this area of consciousness and philosophy. Best-selling author and creator of the groundbreaking theories bridging science and spirituality. His most recent book is Philosopher. He's written 3 other books as well, including Polymath, and Neuromind, and just really excited to have you here today to talk about what you're seeing like in this lifetime and beyond. But I'd love it if you didn't mind. I'm assuming, Robert, that you didn't start in this like ethereal world of philosophy and sacred geometry and consciousness, but would love to hear some of your background story. Like, how did you get to where you got to?
Wow. So, I mean, I spent my whole life, I guess all the way up until about 10 to 12 years ago, in the traditional world, 3D world, as you said. I was a member of YPO, which I know you've been a member of as well. And I was a CEO in the healthcare industry for a long time. And I spent, probably 30 years working in that type of capacity. And then about 2012, I would say, things started to really shift for me. And maybe it was even 2011 or so. But basically, I started to see the world a lot differently. And then that culminated in 2016 in what I would call like a major crisis of life. And I definitely went through this point in life. I was in my mid-40s. And, it's like all of a sudden something seems to break, and you have this crisis that causes you to look really, really deeply within. And for the first time in my life, instead of asking, why did something happen to me, as if life was happening to me, I started asking myself the question, why did I choose this? And as I got deeper and deeper into that question, and I wasn't trying to absolve myself of what happened, I was taking full responsibility for what had happened in my life, I started noticing the patterns that I hadn't noticed before that time. And these patterns were things that were showing up over and over again. And I felt like, geez, it's almost like the same thing that happened to me. It happened to me time and time and time again. But the last time it happened was the most severe. And I started noticing maybe that's the way the universe teaches us. Maybe we have to learn through experiencing the opposite of the thing that we wanted to learn. So, for example, if I was here to learn unconditional love, then I would have to experience betrayal over and over and over again with increasing intensity each time until I no longer judge negatively the concept of betrayal. Because until I've no longer judged the concept of betrayal, I haven't yet learned unconditional love.
So let me ask a question there. I'm like, you're kind of like blowing my mind right now, because I feel like I have a friend that we talk about this, and he's like, yeah, it's God turning up the volume, right? So it's just so when you say say that one more time, because I want to follow that thread, but say that what you just said right now one more time.
So let's assume that we live in a matrix of mind that is based on mentalism. And we're here to learn emotional states. We're here to learn and observe the one source creation through our unique eyes of perception. And the best way for us to learn precepts in this lifetime is actually by experiencing the opposites of the precepts that we're here to learn. So we're here to learn pleasure, for example, then we're going to experience a lifetime of pain. Because that's the only way that we have context as a ratio, in a universal ratio experience. You know, for me to know how long 5 units is, I have to know how long 1 unit is.
Right.
If I don't have a concept of what 1 unit is, then how do I know how long 5 units will be? By the same token, if I'm here to learn pleasure, how do I even know what pleasure is unless I've experienced its opposite?
Right.
So in a way, we start to titrate, right? We triangulate our experience with things by understanding the opposites of those things. So as an example, if you're here to learn unconditional love, then you're going to experience the opposite of unconditional love until you finally understood what unconditional love really means. And so, for example, the intention behind learning unconditional love is you think a positive thing, right? But actually the opposite of unconditional love would be conditional love. And the best way we could think about the representation of that conditional love is betrayal. Because you would never feel betrayed by someone unless you had at one point in time loved them.
Right.
And cared about them. So if you have a trigger point that you are feeling really bad every time you hear the concept of betrayal, and you hear about someone else getting betrayed, and you're like, ooh, that just gets under my skin. I can't stand that. Every time we have a trigger like that, it's actually consciousness telling us you have something to learn.
Interesting.
And so therefore, you continue to experience betrayal in your own life. Why? Because you've judged it to the point where you attracted it over and over and over again.
Do you think that there's like a blind spot associated with these things that we judge? We become like almost myopic in a way where we don't see it because we have to learn it? Like, what's your perspective on that?
Without any doubt whatsoever. That's exactly what it is. In fact, we're here to learn about all of our blind spots. And how do we get our blind spots? Well, we get our blind spots by determining through our choices throughout life what we are not. So I've done a lot of work in business strategy. And one of the first areas that I worked in business strategy is sandbox analysis. So it's like most companies don't really know when they begin what they want to be. What they have to do is they start understanding what it is that they're not good at.
Right.
And then whittling those things out of their mission statement and their values and everything else. So what happens is it's kind of like, you know, the most interesting man in the world, those old commercials of Dos Equis, right?
Right.
Where it's like the most interesting man in the world on careers. You know, what's his opinion on careers? And he'd say, find the thing you don't do well, then don't do that thing. Right?
You're like, oh, this is so profound, but it's so obvious, right? But it's not.
Sandbox analysis is pretty much that, right? That's a sandbox analysis. Like, what do you, as a company, I'd go into a company and say, okay, what do we not do well here? Yeah. And then let's not do those things. It's like, and I do it in this formalized process called start, stop, continue.
Right. Yeah.
What are the things that we need to start? What are the things that we need to continue to do? And what are the things we absolutely must stop doing?
Yeah.
Right. Because it doesn't serve us. Right. And so what we do with our personalities is we kind of do that, but in a unconscious way. So when we're a child and we feel ashamed of something, then we say, I don't want to feel ashamed again. Let's say the teacher shamed us for being late to class. And so we're like, I'm never late. I'm not late anymore, right? Because I never want to feel that shame again. And so that sort of creates a bit of a scar in us that we're no longer even conscious of. And so what happens is we decide what we will not be. I'm not this, I'm not that. And it starts to become more subtle. It's not just about being late or being on time. It becomes more subtle. You know, I came back from South Korea when I was a Mormon missionary, and I decided, okay, I need to go be a business person, or, you know, I wanted to do international business, international law. And so what are the things that fit with that categorization of how I see of myself? And I thought, okay, what are the things that don't fit? So maybe musician, which I'd had a music scholarship at college. Maybe musician doesn't fit for me anymore. So I never told anyone that I was a musician.
Interesting.
I gave it up. I gave it up altogether because I thought, okay, if I'm going to be a serious businessman, I can't be some beatnik musician.
Right.
Right. So this concept of we decide for the first half of our life until our 40s, generally, this is what I am not.
Right.
I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not this, I'm not that. If you might have tendencies to be gay, you might feel like you want to be gay, but then other people are like, oh, you can't be gay, and you feel bad about it, so you feel ashamed of it. So then you start repressing your own homosexuality, right? And so then what happens is you judge the world around you as being full of gay people. And you're so repressing it inside. It's like the movie American Beauty,
Right.
where, you know, Kevin Spacey basically gets killed by his neighbor across the street because he had homophobia, because he himself had gay tendencies, right? So what happens is we start judging without even being consciously aware of it. All the things that we've said we are not, we judge those things, we project them on the people around us. And so we say, oh, he's gay, you know, and then they start gay bashing. This might actually be the case, right? So then what happens is the thing that you've judged negatively in yourself becomes your world. Because why? Because we attract everything we judge until we no longer judge what we attract.
Interesting. There's a saying that what is it? What we resist persists.
What we
right?
resist persists. Absolutely. That is absolutely true. So that's exactly the personification of what I'm talking about. You know, people that say, oh my gosh, I was on the highway, I was surrounded by assholes on the highway today. It's like, bro, if you're constantly surrounded by the asshole, you're the asshole.
Yeah.
You are resonating at the frequency of asshole, so you have attracted assholes.
So I want to go down that kind of that thread on the what we're resonating, because I think that this is a concept that was brought up to me. I don't know. I hadn't thought about this idea of like, who am I resonating with and how am I resonating? I live in Austin, Texas, which I don't know how much, if you spend a lot of time here, but I think there's a certain.
I spent quite a lot of time in Austin. Yeah, I was just there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of there's a resonance here that's attracting a certain type of person that is 10 years old. It probably was here before, but I think it's much stronger now. And that's where you see a lot of entrepreneurs moving here who are pretty like moving the needle. It's what attracted me. And so I had a friend who I was talking to about this, and her name is Gina Malacone Long, and she lives up in Whistler. And she was talking about, if you are resonating in the lower resonating feelings of fear, anxiety, shame, anger, you know, and you're reacting to that. So, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they usually come from some place of like deep insecurity, wanting to prove themselves. I'll use myself as an example. I was like, you know, excuse my language, but fuck everybody. I'm going to like show up and I'm going to be better and I'm going to like win, you know, and there was that like, I'm going to win so I can show worth. Right. But that came from anger. And there's maybe a warrior spirit there to like prove people wrong. And that I think served me till it stopped. And then I realized I'm anxious. If I don't win, I'm pissed. I'm usually pretty ungrateful about anything I get because the needle just moves up, you know, the bar moves up to the right after that. And at some point, I'm 46, I'll be 47 in a couple of weeks. I was like, this isn't fun. Like, no matter what I do, I'm not happy. I had someone say this to me. They said, you are a chronically dissatisfied person. And I did not like that label because intellectually I was like, that's not good. That means like, no matter what happens, I'm not good, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so I did a lot of work and I decided I don't want to resonate in that way. I want to resonate joy, happiness, love, like, and these are these higher resonating. So when you start talking about what you resonate with will attract, like, is it, I mean, in my world, I literally flipped a switch and just changed the way I showed up and like, was like, and I'm not perfect, but it was like a 90-10 thing where I was 90% of the time unhappy, 10% of the time, like peaceful, to now went the other way, which is 90% of the time peaceful, 10%, dealing with bullshit. But I felt like the second I made that switch, my world opened up. Like, I think I always was charismatic and attracting people, but to your point, I was attracting a lot of bad energy that was like creating a lot of
Right.
like bullshit in my life.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of yourself or like the work you do, how do people change that resonance? Is it simply what I just said, like flipping the switch and be like, I'm not going to be like that anymore, or is there something more to it than that?
I think it's a bit more than just saying I'm not going to be like that anymore, because then you just end up in the same loop that got you there in the first place.
Got it.
Right. So instead of judging yourself and saying, I don't want to be like that anymore, think instead, how can I become aware of what led to me acting this way? And also, how can I learn to accept and integrate this aspect of me with non-judgment? Right. And this is, I think, the most important thing that we have to learn is that think of your life as a continuum. Okay. So as a child, you left your mother's side, you got separation anxiety. And then at the end of your life, hopefully, you will love and accept yourself to the highest degree that you possibly can. Right. And maybe we call this enlightenment. And this love and acceptance is mirrored. The degree to which you love and accept yourself is mirrored back to you in all the relationships that you foster and carry. So your friendships, when you're early on, and you might judge yourself heavily, are equally judgmental friendships. They're hard on you, right? Just as you're hard on yourself. So what happens is the way that you perceive yourself is the way that your friends will start perceiving you and treat you the way that you perceive yourself. So if you're tough on yourself, you're hard on yourself, and you don't like yourself, then you're going to end up being treated toughly. You're going to end up treated like ways that are not reflective of your own self-acceptance, but rather it's opposite. So as you get more and more aware and learn to integrate these aspects of yourself that you perceived formerly as a negative aspect and trait, then the relationships around you, your friendships, become more unconditional. Your friendships become less judgmental. The people that you're surrounding yourself with are more akin to how you now see yourself. The world around us is not a universe. It's more of a you-inverse. It's what is inside of you that you're not aware of, that you're projecting into your outer world, so that the universe can teach you time and time again through increasing severity these final aspects that you still hold and carry as judgments against yourself.
Do you think that if one has an awareness, right? I have a mentor, Rand Stagen, who teaches conscious capitalism at Stagen Institute, and I don't know if you're familiar with that group, but he does a lot of stuff at YPO. But where Rand has a quote where he says, "With awareness comes choice," right? And to your point, like if God's turning up the dial, and I've had some recent stuff happen to me where I'm like, really? How did like after all these years and all these lessons to learn this hard, this way, this late in the game? Like, I was like, wow. I think it is to create context around what you don't know, where you're like you should have known this by now, given like what you've learned through your life, especially I think in your 40s. I think you're far enough in the game where you're like, I've been doing this for a while. Like,
right.
I've been an adult for like 25 years, 30 years. Like, how the hell is this happening to me again? Right. And so for me, it was like these patterns where I'm on my third, lap on the pattern. And I'm like, whoa, like this should not be happening this way, this severe, this bad with the amount of experience I have, where I'm like, clearly there's a massive blind spot that I have to go inside and go and figure out what is attracting this energy that puts me in this way that I don't particularly like appreciate. Well, maybe I should appreciate it, but that I'm not enjoying. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if one goes inside with the awareness, makes the choice to go inside and say like, hey, I'm going to do the work. Like I'm going to do the work to figure out like, why is this pattern persisting? And having an awareness of attracting those types of people that are, that are maybe persisting this pattern that you're not appreciating. In your experience, do you find that folks, once they do that work, at least with an awareness, it has a higher likelihood of breaking that pattern?
Yes. I mean, I think in this world of mental matrix that I believe we live in, all we have to really do is become aware of things to fix them. It's the denial stage that's the hardest thing to get beyond.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing with everything that we create separation from ourselves. And we believe that the world around us is not a you-inverse, but rather a universe, and I'm separate from you. You're not me. And it's your fault, whatever it is, right? If our relationship doesn't work out, it's your fault. Rather than us looking introspectively and saying, what was I trying to learn here? Why did I choose this? That reframing of your whole life experience changes everything, because then you start to say, wait a minute, maybe I've been in control of this a lot more than I really thought all along. And all it was is I wasn't aware that this is what life really was, that my thoughts, words, and actions became, not ghosts or apparitions, but the reality of the materiality around me. And that maybe my whole experience, if some people never believe in miracles in life, and so they should never be surprised when they never experience a miracle. Because your thoughts and your beliefs define your experience. You get what you expect in this world. If you believe that there's such thing as miracles, you might experience a miracle. But one thing I can tell you is if you don't believe in miracles at all, you're not going to, even if you do experience a miracle, it's not going to be a miracle.
Right. Yeah. How could that be a miracle? Miracles don't exist. Right.
Miracles don't exist.
Yeah. That's
exactly.
just random.
So be open to it, because the thing is, I never met anyone who could successfully find things that they weren't trying to ultimately look for in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
If you're not looking for something, you're not going to find that thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you know what you're looking for and you start your search for that thing, then you're going to find that thing. This is the nature of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. It's a principle in physics. And us trying to break out of that is just hubris and not going to happen. Right? It really won't happen.
Can I pivot a little bit here, because I have, and I might be going way out of bounds here. So if you don't have an opinion about this, just say, hey, Darius, I don't have an opinion about this. I have a good friend who I've been talking about a lot of this stuff with recently. And she's like, Darius, listen, like we're all energy, like you're energy, I'm energy. Like, and she has a perspective around being energy. Us all being energy means that we're all one, that we're all connected through our energy, and that essentially like our energy goes from lifetime to lifetime. And if we don't learn the lessons in a current lifetime, it'll move into the next lifetime. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that there's definitely some truth to that. But I think that the good news is that we chose that too.
Yeah.
We learn things exactly at the moment that we are needing to learn those things. And that the one source creator, I like to think of it like this. It's like, can an eye see itself? If you needed to look in the mirror and you wanted to see your own face, how would you do it? You might look into a screen, a camera. Right. You might look into a mirror of sorts. But if you had neither a camera nor a mirror nor a still water pond nearby, how could you look at your face?
Yeah, I don't know.
It'd be difficult, right? I mean, you have to find something with a reflection on it.
Sure.
Likewise, consciousness needs to divide itself into mirrors in order to perceive itself.
Okay.
So by this very nature, the conscious mind has a hard time to perceive the subconscious mind. It's blotted out of its existence. Other people can see that you have certain things that are sabotaging you.
Right.
But it's only us that has the hardest time to see it because we have purposefully put it out of our minds and said, I am not that, without
Right.
realizing we still are that. Our own hypocrisy is not something that we can easily view. So this is why most people, their biggest challenge in life is not someone outside. It's not the government, it's not the circumstance, it's not the market conditions. The biggest challenge is your own internal narrative that you might be aware of or that you may not be aware of at all. And that is what has killed more business ideas and entrepreneurial endeavors, your own self-negative belief systems. Consciousness can only expand to the volume of the cage of your own belief system. If you think you can or you think you can't, you will be right, just like Henry Ford said. So if you believe persistently in the obstacles of the world around you, you're just going to continue to create those obstacles day in and day out.
So if somebody like, look, you've done some amazing work in both 3D business and just for the audience, I use the term sometimes, but for those that aren't familiar, I'm like 3D world's like this like matrix business. I'm like, there's this line in the sand. There's like 3D world. We show up, we go play the game, we go build the corporation and, get lobbyists to try to maneuver the tax code of all this man-made shit to try to like win in this like artificial system we've built. Right. And I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of fun. Right.
Yep.
I like it. But I know what it is. And in probably years past, I didn't realize it in that way. I thought of it as it's something that this is real, like real as in it really matters. And I don't actually feel that way now, but I still enjoy playing it. And then there's this other thing, which is like real life. And I think consciousness seems to like live there for me. And I can use consciousness in the other world too, but consciousness is where it's like, hey, this, like at the end of the day, this is the relationships, this is the way I think, it's me living in peace, it's me showing up every day to be my best self, to try to magnify those around me, to elevate them and myself, to like just live a great life, right? And I'm like, that's real world, at least as far as I'm concerned. It sounds like you had a moment like that, in your 40s where you're like playing 3D world in a big game. You were like CEO of Bausch and Lomb, surgical. That's like no joke, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. And then something flipped and you're like, okay, that's a game. I know it, but I want to go play this other game. I want to go play the game that at least what I think matters more. Right.
It's so funny you say that because I remember when I first started becoming like on the, I guess I was starting down my spiritual path. I remember thinking, okay, look at all these people in this spiritual world who are like so in the air and really kind of unable to ground anything,
right.
and I would think, they're not even, they can't even be in the real world. And so I'd refer to the other world, right, which was the 3D matrix world, as the real world. And then now I'm like, wow, was I ever a muggle, right? I was such a muggle. And now this is the real world, and that is like the total matrix fake world, and no one has a clue that's over there. They can't even see it. Isn't that funny how your perspective shifts?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that happens as a series of softenings. Richard Rudd, my friend who wrote the Gene Keys, says, awakening is a series of softenings that turns pain into purpose. And turns your suffering and life difficulties into the gold of soul evolution. And to me, that is really emblematic of all of this experience. We so desire to want to be in a world that's utopian and perfected and everybody gets along and it's all wonderful. But actually, I went to my high school reunion. I went to my high school Hall of Fame event that they held for me. And this was in 2015. And this was kind of at the end of my former real world experience.
Right.
And they had this high school thing for me. They had me speak and they had all my teachers there. And I was like dumbfounded a bit because I couldn't even remember some of the names of my high school teachers.
Oh, wow.
And I realized the only ones I remembered were the ones that challenged me and were the hardest. The easy ones I didn't even remember.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? Isn't that true also with life's teachings? That the most difficult of circumstances that get thrown our way are the ones that we remember the most. right? So, I mean, what a difference that really is, that we tend to think about, okay, do we want to be relevant or do we want to be easy? Do we want life to be easy or do we want it to be meaningful and deep? Because it doesn't matter how we die, because we all die. The only
Right.
thing that matters in the end, final analysis, is how we decided to live. And those difficult circumstances, we can start looking at them with antipathy and say, oh, it's too much suffering, it's too much difficulty. Or we can look back on them and say, just like my most difficult teachers, well, Mr. Heaven was my best teacher because, man, he pushed me so hard. I kept telling the story of people of how difficult his class was and how it gave me a love for history that I never would have otherwise had. So I'm eternally grateful now to this guy for being so hard and being so tough on me and believing that I was capable of more than I even believed myself to be capable of. This is the difference of life. I think as we get older, we start realizing that, maybe judgment and our judgments in life is the source of our suffering, because ultimately it's why we keep having the same experiences on loop over and over and over again, because we attracted everything we judged. But actually, maybe at some point you actually start realizing that, okay, if judgment is the source of suffering, suffering is also the source of enlightenment.
So it's
the most difficult of circumstances. It's all on the pathway.
Yeah.
And you start realizing, wait, the thing that was the worst thing that ever happened to me actually became the best thing that ever happened to me. And how many of us can actually name things like that? Many.
Right.
Many, many, many. One of my best friends, his father died in 2017. Now he looks back on that and it was the most traumatic, difficult experience for him because he lost him too early. But at the same time, it turned him into the man he is today. And it led to him founding his company and becoming very independent, where until that time, he was still kind of attached to this old version of himself. It caused him to transform like a dragonfly. Dragonflies don't know that they have the ability to fly. They're just these little larvae that's underwater. And then one day it goes through this molting process. And several weeks later, it comes out this silicon dragonfly with silicon wings and iridescent colors, and it looks nothing like it did before. And then it's flying over the same pond where its friends are still under there, and it's waiting for them to also ascend. So this is the thing we don't know. It's kind of like the image I'm reminded of is of a kitten looking in a mirror, and the reflection in the mirror is a lion. Each one of us has something great within us. It's our job to find that path, to realize that we have this greatness within, and finding that balance is really about us becoming aware of our dark aspects that we formerly rejected. And once we do, then our life can go into balance and we can find our own divine self.
And when you say that, like the words that come up for me is really like acceptance and loving oneself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you start thinking of your path to finding your divine self, like what has that changed? Because if we're talking about moving from this 3D world of like business accolades and like I grew this big business or I did this thing or I'm famous, all this like stuff that like honestly, if I was to be honest with myself, I actually gave a shit about it at some point. And I do actually want to win in some of those reasons, but not from a place of vanity, but from a place of purpose. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for me, that's been a transformation and I'm just kind of now getting there where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know exactly what that means, but I know why I want to do it. For yourself, like you've had this huge 3D success, and now this like I guess more conscious, more I guess enlightened success. Is that because you found that alignment for yourself and then leaned into it? Tell us a little bit about that.
I think what it was is I started to know that I was going through a transformation. And the most powerful transformations are the ones that change how you perceive your world. If you want to change the world around you, you'll never be able to do it. It's been my experience. You can't change the world by trying to change the world around you outwardly. The only way that you'll change the world is by changing the way you perceive the world and how you perceive yourself. If you start to become the change you hope to see in the world, then that change starts to reflect around you. Just as I said, the relationships, the people you meet, everything shows up in the world around you as a reflection of how you see and perceive yourself. So if you want to change the world, then start to be the change you want to see in the world. That's the solution to it. It's not oh, I'm going to fight this deforestation or this anti-whaling, whatever it is, different activist thing, what we resist will only continue to persist. So when we finally start to accept the world and love it just as it is, that is tantamount to us accepting and loving ourselves just as we are. And that's when we start to blossom. That's when all of a sudden you realize that you have talents and abilities you never thought that you had. As soon as you start taking off the limitations, it's kind of like being in a dream that you don't even know you're a dream, that you're in the dream, right? Have you ever had a dream where you've woken up in the dream and you realize that you're in a dream?
Yeah, I have.
And then have you tried to see what you can do when you experience that? Because that's when usually people, they call it lucid dreaming. And then you could start to fly, or you could defy other natural laws that would normally seem impossible inside the dream. Well, until that moment, you thought you were in real life.
Right.
It seemed awfully real. Where are the photons coming from that make the light? You could be looking at a sunset inside your dream, but how is it even happening? Right? So the point is that basically you finally wake up from the dream and you realize, oh, I can fly. It happened to me. I was in Okinawa, Japan in this dream, and I was swimming around in the Pacific Ocean. And there were like 5 of my friends were all snorkeling together around the island of Okinawa. And then I realized I'm dreaming. So I thought, oh, let me just levitate out of the water here.
Yeah.
So I did. And then I flew away. I think what's happening right now is we're all starting to wake up to the illusion of our lives. And we're starting to realize that we've been in a dream. And now we're also starting to question, well, what's possible in this dream? What are the limitations we have? Oh, the only limitations truly are the ones we believe in.
Right.
And even the natural laws and constructs that we have around us that we believe are there because we believe them. I'm not saying go try and fly or jump off the building. But what I am saying is that a lot of the things that maybe we thought that we are not capable of, we are indeed and in fact capable of. We just haven't pressed the boundary because we believed that we couldn't.
And
that's the shift.
Do you think, speaking of like the world we're in right now, I have 2 feelings. I feel like there's a lot of polarizing, like, noise, and feels very negative, right? And then I think layered on top of that, you have this, to your point a moment ago, an awakening, right? At least I'm seeing it with a lot of people in my world where they're talking about a lot of the things we're talking about, and these are people that I would consider people that have been fairly successful, and they're starting to like really pour into consciousness and awakening and seeing what's real and wanting more of that and talking about, and that creates a resonance around them. And then we have this other thing, and talking about your background, combining science and spirituality around AI, where we have this accelerator. And I was talking to a woman who I befriended recently. Her name's Alicia Abate, and her perspective is that AI has its own consciousness, and that it is, I don't want to say it's a solution for some of this, but if we are awakening to a truth and we have an accelerator in the form of artificial intelligence that can actually exacerbate the consciousness of us as mankind, that can actually transform this awakening in a much larger way. There's an exponential outcome that can come, and we are the inputs for that.
Yep.
Do you have any perspective on this?
I do. I think that is absolutely the case. And it's very much in line with what I was just saying, that we are all only limited by our own self-limiting beliefs. And there's no exception to this. I really don't believe there's an exception to this. And so what we're starting to wake up to is that we're in an illusion of sorts that's no different than a dream. And in your dream, you have a first-person narrative position in your dream. But there's lots of other people in your dream that until you wake up inside your dream and know that you're dreaming, you think they're all separate from you. But who's dreaming? It's still you that's dreaming. So who are all the other people? they're you also. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
only limitations are the ones that we impose on ourselves. And once we learn that and we can break out of that, then anything is possible. This is where manifestation can go hyperdrive. This morning I was watching a video with this woman who had tinfoil on her table. And she was trying to use telekinesis because she believed that she could move these objects of tinfoil on her table with her thought. And so she started going like this with her right hand. She would start going like this and try to move it, right? And it was far enough away that, it wasn't from the wind or something she could create by her hand that was causing this to potentially move. And then she would do this with her other hand, her left hand, and all of a sudden the tinfoil starts moving.
Whoa.
Right? So I started thinking to myself, well, wow, under this new context of being in the awakened dream state, what are the things that are possible to us? Have you seen the new podcast called Telepathy Tapes?
No.
Where it basically chronicles and shows how kids with autism have the ability to communicate telepathically.
Oh, wow. No, I've heard about this. I haven't seen this.
It's amazing. It's totally amazing. And actually what you start realizing is that maybe a lot of these aspects that we think would be, only for comic books and for stories of like superheroes and such, is this now just the evolution of where mankind is going? And I fundamentally believe that is the case. That all of us are capable of telepathy, that all of us are capable of telekinesis, that all of us eventually are capable. The only thing that keeps us from doing it is our belief system. So think about what you could do with manifestation. Think about what you could do with manifestation if you weren't always your own worst enemy.
Right. Oh, I can't do that. Yeah, because I can't do that. It's not going to happen. And how can I manifest something that isn't going to happen?
Exactly. But see, isn't that just kind of a cop-out?
Yeah, it's easy.
Because now for you to say that you had the ability to overcome it, but you just couldn't overcome it because of external circumstance or whatever is a lot easier than for you to say, I had the ability and I chose not to.
Right. Yeah.
That sounds too mediocre.
Yeah,
but as Walter Russell said, genius is self-bestowed and mediocrity is likewise self-inflicted.
Yeah. Yeah. What, when you start, you're rocking my world, man. For yourself, like, as you start to look at the next 50 years of your life, what's in it for you? Like, where are you really excited right now?
I'm definitely in the awakened dream state right now. I'm living out a very interesting and fun life to the max. I get to travel all around the world, and I never thought that I'd be going on speaking tours and talking about this type of stuff in front of thousands of people in Brazil and Europe and all kinds of places. But I am now. I never thought I'd be leading group tours of sacred sites around the world, which I do now. I take people on trips to Egypt for an initiatic path, and that's been a great experience for me as well. So I feel like the best thing I can do to change my world is to be absolutely radically authentic. That my purpose in this world is not to subjugate other people. It's not to become a leader for people. It's not to become some sort of guru or something like that either. My purpose in this world is to simply show an example of what can be. That's it. And once I show that example, I was just putting together my curriculum for my European tour, and me and my team decided the best thing for me to do is just to give my story, to tell my story of what I personally experienced. It's not going to be exactly the way you will experience your awakening process. It also will not be, the same endpoints or the goals and objectives that I may have had. through the whole thing that you might have. But what it will do, and I hope, is that it will help to show you at least what my experience was. And maybe in some way, shape, or form, that in of itself will be helpful to you as you approach your own personal experience. I don't believe anyone should be a guru to anyone else. I believe that we are all our own gurus. And if you believe that, the rest of the world is pretty divine, and I've been to national parks and I can see God's signature in everything, but I couldn't possibly be God because I know myself, and I'm definitely not that. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I've done all kinds of bad stuff. I stole something in junior high school or whatever it is. Once you finally start to realize that actually you are all that is, if you still believe that you're the only part of the universe or universe that's not divine because you couldn't possibly be, that is ego. People would say, wait, he's got God complex. He thinks he's God. There's a lot of people in YPO like that, right? So it's like, wow, he's got God complex. Wow, how cool. He thinks he's God. That's really terrible. Well, if you think that everyone else might be God, but you're the only one that's not, then that is you displaying your own separation and ego.
Yeah. Interesting.
You're just as divine as everyone else. There's nobody on earth that's better than anyone else. So try to rid yourself of this concept of someone being better. Thanos, right, from the Marvel stories, thought he was doing a great thing by wiping out half the people. And that's usually what happens. I'm not afraid of people that have darkness. I'm only afraid of people that believe they have none. And those are the people that do the most jacked up things in society. Think about it. People that believe they have no darkness are the ones that do the scariest, most messed up stuff. Yeah. I mean, this was Hitler. Hitler thought he was doing the right thing and he was being good. Well, I mean, obviously he committed genocide, right? I mean, no matter how you look at that, there's no way you could look at that and say, oh, well, that was good. But in his mind, he was like, oh, I'm getting rid of all these bad people. Right. Yeah. We all have a hero bias in this game. We all think that we are the hero. In fact, we define our existence, our very existence, on the notion that we begin where the hero ends. I mean, where the hero begins where the villain ends, and the villain begins where the hero ends. It's like one doesn't exist without the other. Yeah. Well, it's interesting to think, and I think that to have that acknowledgement that we're both. Right. We are both, and learn to love and accept that. Yeah. I love that. Man, you just got me starting to think about my darkness. Well, that, we don't become awakened, or, I don't even like the term enlightened because it implies there's an end to enlightenment. I think it never ends. Yeah. So I call it enlightening instead. But, I fundamentally believe that as we learn to love ourselves and accept ourselves, we learn in the same process to love and accept others. It's our judgment of ourselves that cause us to be judgy and judgmental to the people in the outer world around us. And that's what holds us back, because then we have lots of negative self-narratives of not believing in ourselves, of what we're capable in and capable of. And that's what holds us back from the great successes of life. Well, it's interesting as you say that, you start to think, like, I'll use myself as an example. If you start to think about, and, like the drama triangle, and like, oh, who's persecuting me? And I'm the victim and they're bad. And there's another perspective of that, which is, what if I love them, understand that they are flawed? It's on them to, and as am I, it's on them to have an awareness so that maybe they can live a more happy existence. And I'm not going to hold what they're doing against me, because they can't make me feel anyway. I can only make me feel. And it's my choice whether I engage with them in a way such that I would feel that way. And I've found that when I've said these things to certain people that in my life that maybe are not in agreement with that statement, is they're like, how can you actually feel that way, Darius? How can you actually accept that person's not a bad person? And I'm like, because I think everyone's, to your point, we're all bad. And everyone's good. Equally good and equally bad. And I
Yeah.
know some people have a hard time with that because they're like, wait, you're telling me, no, I'm telling you that it's a principle of universal physics. You cannot have more light than you have darkness,
Huh.
because the light and darkness is not the absence of light. It's the absorbed condition of light's reflection.
Interesting.
So we all have this idea in our minds that if you come in a room and you turn off all the lights and you close all the windows and put Vanta black paint on the walls that is highly absorptive, then, you know, that is, you turn off the light and there's an absence of light. Therefore, there's no light. Well, actually, if you analyze the room with spectroscopy, you're going to find that there are elements throughout the room, right? In your ambient air. Otherwise, you'd be dead, right? You have to be able to breathe it. So you've got oxygen in there, you've got nitrogen in there, and nitrogen and oxygen put off a certain light signature. It's below the perceptibility of your consciousness, the conscious mind, but it's still there. And so therefore, what's happening when we turn off the light is that you've got this low level ambient light that's coming from every molecule, every element that it's comprised of, right? And that whole surrounding area. So if carbon desk, there's like light that comes off of that. I know the exact frequency of that light that it could be. But then when we flip on the light, what's happening is that the reflection is now been magnified on the same thing that was there. That's what's creating the light. So that gives us all the differentiation of color and everything else. You know, it's like my little logo here on my chest. This red is not really red. It's just reflecting red. And the blue is not really blue. It's reflecting blue. So, but actually, what is the color of absorption for the red? It's blue. And what is the color of the absorption for the blue? It's red.
I love it. You're blowing my mind. Man, we're running out of time. I don't respect your time, Robert. I want to go to the greatness question. And before we go there, look, you've written a bunch of books, and I was like, man, how did you learn all this stuff? I mean, and someone like myself that's like, I want to learn way more about this. Obviously, reading your books is top of my list. Is there any foundational readings that on top of your books that you would recommend for folks that want to like dive into these subjects?
I would say that, reading my books definitely helps you dive in. Also, I have courses, but I have a TV show as well on Gaia called Code X, season 1 and season 2. That's an easy way to get people introduced to these concepts as well. But yeah, those are kind of like the books that I go through and I used, because that's been my pathway. I used a lot more of arithmetic and mathematics and geometry, but now my work has gone largely into cosmology and into physics. But I had the foundational basis. There's a language of mathematics, and the language of mathematics is a language most people don't really like, but actually they're starting to fall in love with it now.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, if you're here to learn to love mathematics, then you're going to have an experience where you hate mathematics over and over and over again because it's terrible to you, until you finally learn to embrace it and realize it's another aspect of yourself. It was there all along.
Yeah. I love math. So
yeah, I mean, if you love math, it makes it a lot easier, right? It makes it a lot easier. But realistically, I think that's really the point, that all the things that we thought we rejected in ourselves are the things that we eventually need to go back and touch. You know, you can skip rungs on the ladder of life, but eventually you got to go back and touch every rung that you skipped. And not only touch it, but integrate it into who you are.
Yeah. Man. So anyone that wants to learn more about your work, where should we send them to? What's like the thing that matters most right now for folks that want to like really dig into these subjects and learn more about the work you're doing, get involved with the stuff that you're caring about?
I do a lot of work on Egypt. I do a lot of work in consciousness and mathematics and geometry and physics. And I'm in all of these areas, and entrepreneurship and manifestation and all of that. But you can find me at robertedwardgrant.com. And it's not because I'm pretentious that I use my middle name. It's just that robertgrant.com was taken. Right?
Awesome. We'll put that in the show.
And I wanted to be able to have that. That's also on Instagram, the same name. I have a YouTube channel as well. I have a podcast myself. And then I have these several books. You can find everything, though, on the repository of my website.
Awesome. We'll go ahead and do that. And guys, I highly recommend, Robert has an amazing Instagram and great website. So go check that out. We'll make sure we put all that stuff in the show notes. So again, that's robertedwardgrant.com. You guys check that out. And with that said, Robert, you ready for the greatness question?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. What is the number one barrier to creating greatness that you've overcome in your life, and how did you overcome it?
Me. I'm my own worst enemy. And until I stopped seeing that as an enemy, I couldn't integrate it. So the moment I could start to integrate it, then I had no resistance in my life, and I could actually experience my greatest successes. We are all our own worst enemy until we befriend. We have to learn to befriend that aspect of ourselves that we have just bumped up against so many times over and over and over again and decided that we would hate it. It's time to fall in love with that aspect of ourself as well. Learn to accept it. It doesn't mean that we condone bad behavior. It simply means that instead of judging, you seek rather to understand. Rid your life of the word judgment and instead go for the word to understand.
Love it, my friend.
And that's what I would say has led to the greatest success of my life. And that is the belief that there's no limitations.
Robert, you're a stud. I love this so much, man. I appreciate you. So much gratitude from us here at the Greatness Machine. Thank you for coming on our show today, my friend.
Likewise. Great to talk with you, Darius.
Likewise. Guys, go out there, share this. Until next time, peace out. We love you. You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on, so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers, and after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one.
She's my lover.